Why did Adam hide? Clearly, we see in chapter 3 of Genesis, which records the paradise being lost, which records how the paradise where there's no sin and death, a wonderful place, joy, delight, worship, and fellowship, it is being destroyed because of Adam and Eve's disobedience, and they're hiding. Well, that's a question that I'd like to answer for us this morning. Last week, I talked about how, why did God make us? That was a question that I asked. And the answer is found in the fact in Genesis 1:26 that God made us in His image. God made us in His image. Okay? That answers for us three things. Because we're made in His image, that we're made for worship. Because God is glorified, we are made in His image, we are to reflect His glory. And that's what worship is. Giving glory to God, as we should. Reflecting His glory. Making that worship is the most important activity of a humankind. That we're saying that God is worth my time. God is worth my sacrifice. God is worth my coming together on a Sunday and bringing offerings unto Him. Offerings of time, sacrifice, love, joy, delight, my life, that He built us for worship. And because He made us in His image, that we are built for stewardship. And not just kind of a stewardship that you may be thinking, oh, it's like, I don't want to do it because it's chore. No. The stewardship that Genesis is talking about is representative stewardship. God wants us to represent Him to nature, have dominion over it. So our stewardship is to represent God to our nature. We're not to abuse it. We're to take care of it. We're to nurture it. We're to make it beautiful because it's our Father's world. So we're made in His image. Therefore, we are made for worship. We're made in His image. Therefore, we're made for stewardship. And because we're made in His image, and who is God? Our God, our Christian God, is different than a Jewish God and a Muslim God or any other gods in the world, because our God, and our God only, is the triune God. Our God is Trinity. Our God, by definition, intrinsically, His community. You and I are not. We're made in His image, but we're not a duplication of God. We're not a replica of God, and therefore we together, male and female, God made, to what? To be a relational, to be a community, because God is community. And the only way that we can really honor God, and the only way that we can really understand who I am, is to know God. And so He made us for relationship, and we can't escape that. And today, I'm going ahead and answering this question, why did Adam hide? Why did Adam hide? And I'm going to try to explain this passage. And in part, I'm going to be adding one more to why did God make us? He made us for worship. He made us for stewardship. He made us for relationship. If you remember one thing, just remember this then, that He made us for what? He made us to be known. He made us to be known, and He made us to love. That's why He made us. But why is Adam hiding? Because something happened. The paradise was lost. So being known becomes difficult. Somebody knowing me, knowing about me, we feel a little uncomfortable because we say, what do we say? Why are you intruding my personal space? Why are you asking me these personal questions? This is private. This is privacy. And yes, we shouldn't be nosy. We shouldn't be like a church lady on Saturday Night Live. But at the same time, some of us are way too private because we don't feel comfortable being known. And so we hide. Why did Adam hide? Then the eyes of both were opened, and they knew that they were naked. Now, I don't want you to misunderstand this English translation of the Hebrew Bible. It's not as though Adam and Eve had no idea that they were naked. It's not as though Adam and Eve were walking around and being happy and saying, oh, there's fruit here, fruit there, let's enjoy it. And before they sinned, it wasn't as if that they didn't have a cognition that they were naked. That's not what this passage is saying. when their eyes were being opened, it's not their physical eyes opening up and saying, Eve, did you know that we're naked? I didn't know, Adam. Did you know? It wasn't that. It's a new consciousness. What the Bible is saying is that the nakedness became a new consciousness, and this became a problem for them. So what do? They solve it. As many of us do often, that we face something that's uncomfortable and we try to solve it. What do? They sewed fig leaves together and made themselves loincloth. They began to hide. I'll explain a little bit more later. And verse 10, I skipped a little. So this is God, right, in the Garden of Eden. And in the cool of the day is how he's being described. God is coming as he does, and he's seeking fellowship with humanity, Adam and Eve. And what is Adam doing? He's hiding. And God asks, where are you, Adam? Where are you? And Adam's answer is interesting. And he says, I heard the sound of you in the garden, and I was afraid. I was afraid, he says. And then he gives a reason. The reason for my being afraid is because I was naked and I hid myself. Because I was naked and I hid myself. And God would be saying, but Adam, you were naked before. You've always been naked. And what happened to you? What's going on with you? What's going on with your consciousness that all of a sudden you were naked before and that was fine? That's how I built you. You are to reflect the glory of me through purity, through righteousness, through goodness. And so even though you're physically naked, you're clothed in my glory. But now all of a sudden, this is an issue for you. So what we know is the following, as we make an observation about this passage, and that is, nakedness is not the problem. It's not like Adam and Eve. They were clothed and they said, let's eat of that tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Looks good, it's desirable, it's going to make us wise, it looks tasty. Let's go ahead and eat that. And as soon as they ate it, their clothes were taken off and it's like dragged away. It wasn't like that. So we know that nakedness is not the problem, especially because the Bible tells us. Genesis chapter 2, verses 24 and 25. Next week I'll change the highlight color. I didn't realize that it's kind of hard to see. I'll go back to the yellow color. Let me read for us, verse 24 and 25. Therefore a man shall leave his father and his mother and hold fast to his wife. It's talking about marriage. I often use this passage when I do the weddings and preparation for a wedding ceremony. I go back to this passage, chapter 2, and talk about how it is important for the people that are getting married need to be adult about it. And then in verse 25, it says, and the man and his wife were both naked and were not ashamed. Chapter 2 ends with this declaration. Nakedness is not the problem. Chapter 2 affirms for us that the nakedness is not a problem. In fact, before sinning, that they were glorifying God as who they were. But in chapter 3, it becomes a problem. And the key word is what? Ashamed. Being ashamed. So we need to figure out, we need to go to the Bible, we need to study. Because these words are familiar words to us. Nakedness, ashamed, hiding. And therefore, because these are familiar words, we assume that we know the definition of it. We think to ourselves that this is how the Bible is being used. This is why we need to humble ourselves, especially when we come across words that we know about. So what we end up doing is that we end up applying our definitions into the Holy Scriptures, and therefore we end up misinterpreting it. So we need the humility to say, I know this word naked, I know this word hiding, I know this word ashamed, but I wonder what God is saying about those words. So humbly, we should open up the Word, as we're doing right now, and study this Word. So let's do that. Meaning of nakedness. In the Bible, because Adam and Eve, they were made for worship, to glorify God, to reflect God's glory, for stewardship, to have dominion over nature as the apex of God's creation, and to have relationship with one another, reflecting the Trinity of God. and to be known and to love, the meaning of nakedness is to be known, exposed. Sometimes I don't get to do this anymore, but as you know that I'm a pro bono coach, and I coach missionaries, missionary kids, and also some underprivileged societies, underprivileged folks who need quality coaching and counseling, but they can't afford it. And in the past few years, that was my thing, but that was my main thing, providing quality coaching and counseling to those who could not afford it. And oftentimes, an affirmation of how the coaching session went comes to me when the person that is receiving it, having a coaching conversation would tell me, Pastor Brian, I felt like today that I had a spiritual MRI. I felt like I took an X-ray of my soul today in our coaching conversation. What the person is saying is not so much that I am getting to know the person. The person is saying in a good coaching conversation, the person says, I think I know who I am better. I think I know who I am better. Why? Because most of us, all of our lives, we're told who we are. We're told who we are. The society tells us who we are. And so people don't know who they are a lot of times because they're told who they are. But the Word of God, as a wise counsel, awakens us. And we begin to realize, this is who I am. Not what the society defines as who I ought to be. And people feel better because when they're known, we are at our rest. We are at our Sabbath. We are at our most comfortable situation when somebody knows us and not only knows us, but accepts us for who we are. So nakedness, the definition of nakedness in the Bible, especially in Genesis, is not only to be known, but it's also to be vulnerable. Vulnerable. And to be accepted. To be accepted. So known and loved. Be known and be loved is why God made us, or how God made us. We're meant to be known. We're meant to know one another, and as we know each other, we're meant to embrace and love and encourage one another as people of God. And yet Adam is uncomfortable. Why? Because now Adam, for him, God is the unseen seer. Do you have friends like this? I do. And if I'm describing you, I do apologize. This is not a targeted aspect of it. But, I've been doing Facebook, the social media for some time. A couple of times I just simply close it out and I wouldn't touch it for a few months because I didn't know why, but all of a sudden I would have so many people as my friends on my Facebook. I get it why. I get why. It's partly my responsibility. In the beginning when I was doing Facebook, it became one of those things like when somebody, I have no idea who the person is, somebody befriends me and says, oh, one more friend. And it was so satisfying to have one more friend and one more like. So I would just simply add on, to my friend circle and so forth. But eventually I became wise and I said to myself, you know what, I only want my friends to be my friend on my Facebook. So I started a whole new Facebook and I just started until one at a time I would add on. But eventually, for some strange reason, usually it's because my friend's friend would, befriend me and so forth. So right now I have a few few friends, not that many. But at the same time, we don't interact. What do? As far as I can tell, they're voyeurs. They just read what I upload. They just read and they become what? They want to be the unseen seer. You know why? Because we know by definition that God is the unseen seer. Do you believe that God is here with us? I do. Can you see God with your naked eyes? We can't. Why? Because our God is the unseen seer. And whether you're a Christian, whether you're not a Christian, God is uncomfortable for you and me because we don't like to be voyeured. We like watching other people. But the minute you find out that as you're watching someone else, that somebody's actually watching you, watching somebody else, that's like, whoa. We don't like to be watched by somebody who's unseen. That's because that's part of our human nature, sinful human nature. So, once again, what is the meaning of nakedness? Vulnerability, to be known, and to accept and to love. That's a biblical definition of nakedness. So, one thing, if you remember, this would be the one thing that you would remember. We were originally built to be known and beloved. All my coaching and counseling sessions, it comes down to this. It comes down to this. I want to be loved for who I am. A lot of kids basically come and tell me this and say, my parents want me to do this, and I think they're trying to live their dream, their unfulfilled dream through me, and I feel like my humanity is being stepped on. No, they don't use those intelligent words. They usually just tell me their emotions, and they usually tell me, I don't know, I don't want to do anything, I don't feel like doing anything. They just kind of do a temper tantrum, but I listen to them, I respect them, I have a neutral curiosity as to who they are, and I ask them, sounds like you're saying you want to be loved for who you are. Am I right? And they say, yeah. I love my parents, but I don't get it. If I have to get into a good school to be loved by my parents, if I have to get good grades in order to be loved by my parents, if I have to perform in order to be loved by my parents, then who am I? What am I really? And they get lost. So they just want to be loved for who they are. And we get older, and we do the same thing as well. We are most satisfied when somebody loves us, somebody knows us, somebody watches us, somebody sees us, and we feel exposed. We feel like that person knows me through and through. MRI. You have friends like that? And you reveal yourself, you reveal that you are like weak and feeble, and they say, thank you for sharing that. You have courage to let me know of your vulnerability, but I respect you for who you are. I embrace you for who you are. You're my friend. Does that ever happen to you? Sometimes I, as a pastor, because I'm a public figure, I'm told as Pastor Brian, don't share too much about your private life. I say, okay. But in my ministry, I write Shepherd's Corner, and I started doing this back in 1990 something, I forget when, early 90s. And back then, even now, I let people know, I let church know, I say, in these pages, I'm not trying to do a Bible study, I'm not trying to tell you what to do, I'm just sharing about my heart, my hope, my hurt. Don't hold me to it, I'm trying to commune with you, I'm trying to be known, and I'm trying to be loved. A few years ago when my dad died, I guess I didn't know. When my mom had passed away, I cried a little, and it was sad, of course. But I had no idea that when my dad died, that it would have such an impact. I had no idea. My parents and I, back then, had the same doctor. So she knew that my dad had passed away too. And I was in for some sort of physical. And I had known her from Boston from the 90s, long time, dear friend. And she's looking at me and she's like, Pastor Brian, can I tell you something? And I say, yeah, Dr. Sue, what is it? I think you're depressed. Me? Why do you say that? And she's like, well, just an observation. Can I prescribe you a medicine? And she knows that I have this allergic reaction to any kind of medicine. I don't like taking medicine. I suffer through, and the last minute I take the medicine. She's like, Pastor Brian, can I prescribe some medicine? It's not addictive. It's a very, very small portion, but I think this will help you. And I did. And it did help me. It did help me a lot. And so I was on it for a while because with medicine, it needs to be part of your biological, ecosystem. And then after I think a year, I was better, so I was off of it. Eventually, I got called to a ministry in Korea. Then I was in Korea, and then I was having a tough time adjusting, and I began to get depressed. And so I sought out help, the same doctor. I said, "Hey, Sue, da-da-da-da," and she prescribed the medicine for me. And I made, I wrote about it on my Shepherd's Corner. I told the church and said, "Hey, I'm back in Korea and I'm doing this ministry, and it's not easy. And I want you to know that I'm taking this medicine, and I'll get better." And there were two reactions. Actually, there were three. One reaction was like, "Don't care." was one reaction, major reaction. One reaction was people coming up to me and say, "Pastor Brian, I'm taking that medicine. I've been on it for a while, and thank you for sharing that, because I was struggling with the guilt and to realize that my pastor's taking the same meds as I do. I'm okay. I feel better." But there were a group of people, and I didn't know about it, but I began to hear later on. It says, "What kind of a pastor is taking a medicine to calm his heart down? He should be praying. He should be going to the prayer mountains and so forth, instead of taking medicine and telling us about it." I wanted to tell them. I kind of knew who they were, but I wanted to tell them. I would tell them, "Well, I get fever and I take medicine too," but that would have been a bitter and angry thing. I shouldn't have done that. Let me move on. You and I really want to be known for who we are, warts and all. And isn't it true that you and I really want to be loved for being who we are? I don't do as much of a marriage counseling as I used to before, but because I'm focusing on this church and ministry. But it boils down to this. Marital relationships, any parent-child relationship, it boils down to this. I want somebody to love me for who I am. My warts and all, my idiosyncratic behavior and all. I want somebody to know me for who I am, see me for who I am, and still embrace me as part of their community, accept me as their own. But what sin did was that sin made us stupid. Sin did not make them naked. Sin made them unable to, next slide. Sin made them unable to deal with being known and loved. Next slide, please. Thank you. Okay. It wasn't sin that made them naked. No, I didn't mean next slide. I meant this slide. Thank you. Sin made them unable to deal with being known and loved. That's what it comes down to, folks. What you and I struggle, what you and I right now need to deal with is how to deal with this being known and being loved. What did sin do? Sin made us feel unworthy, and rightly so. So this shame comes into the picture. Brené Brown, Houston University professor, and I got to know her as I was writing my thesis a few years ago. And she's been a researcher, and she's been a researcher for, I think, 3 decades, and her research is on shame. Shame. She's been researching shame for 30 years. Good for her, not shame on her. And she defines shame as fear of disconnection, manifestation of fear of disconnection. There are 2 different things, but they're so connected. And the way we deal with shame is that we hide. Adam and Eve, why did they take the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil? Was it nutritional reasons? Were they hungry? Were there not enough food to go around and said, hey, we're really hungry, and that if we eat that fruit from that tree, we can survive? No. They had God. They had a relationship with God. They had the creation, Eden, without fall. They had everything. They were reflecting God's glory. They had the dominion over the world. They had paradise. Why did they take the fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil? Because they wanted to be like God. They wanted to be sovereign. And what is sovereignty? It's control, isn't it? Control. When you and I lose control, we say what? We're being enslaved. You and I, when we lose control, we say, oh, we're becoming enslaved. I'm not myself. So human beings, we want to be like God. And neutrally, that's not a bad thing because we're made in the image of God. We're to reflect God's glory. We're to represent God's sovereignty as stewards. We are to have a communal relationship with God, the triune God, with one another, a community. Yeah, it's all part of our DNA. What God is telling us, my children, I made you in my image, therefore you could be like me in fellowship. But if you disobey me and if you try to be like God, you'll end up being less than who you are. So why did Adam hide? Because he tried to be like God, and he tried to have control over his life. So what do? We hide. First, they make the fig leaf. Out of fig leaves, they make a loincloth. They cover the most sensitive aspect, genitalia and so forth. So they hide from each other. I don't want you to see me, and so forth, right? I mean, that's why most of us, wear makeup and put on nice clothes and so forth. Put on hair gel and stuff like that. Because I certainly don't want you to see me as I look at 5 a.m. On Monday morning. And you don't want to be seen as, who you are. And so we cover ourselves. That's good, but then we hide from each other. That's why some of you are, what? Very, very private people. You don't open up. You don't make eye contact. You don't share about your feelings, your fears. Because you're afraid that if you share your fears, they may look down upon you. Like some people did when I shared that I was taking some medicine for my heart and my emotional condition. We hide from each other. Then what did Adam and Eve do? They hid behind a tree. God sought them out. God wanted to have fellowship with them. But Adam and Eve, they hide behind a tree. Why? They wanted to hide from God. But more than that, this is something that all of us do, all of the fallen humanity does, is what? We hide from ourselves. We hide from ourselves. I used to say, in the olden days, denial is not a river in Egypt. And yes, I got the same reaction that back then as well. Denial is not a river in Egypt. We deny. We make excuses. What did Adam do? She made me do it. What did Eve do? The devil made me do it. But do you know? There's a blame tree. There's a blame pyramid. When you start blaming people, blaming situations, blaming, family, blaming others, blaming your boss, blaming your employer, employee, co-workers, you blame other people. You know who's at the top of their blame tree? God. Blame your husband, but who made your husband? God. Blame, your boss, who made your boss in the situation? God. So at the heart of all the blames, at the center of it, there is a rebellious heart that wants to blame God. So let's examine that a little bit. We hide behind fig leaves. We all have a sense of inadequacy. We're exposed and we're ashamed of it. Shame is feeling and thinking, I'm not good enough. Because we have this fear of being disconnected. We have this fear of being disconnected. And so we all have this thing. All of us, even now. We repeat this phrase to ourselves on a daily basis. Is there something about me, if people found out, then I won't be worthy of their friendship, our connection? We have this problem. Many of us who don't know Christ, we try medication, we try, gambling, adult beverages. We try all kinds of things to distract ourselves. But the thing is, in order for a connection to happen, we have to let others see us. You know this. You can't be private. You can't be a voyeur and just watch other people's Facebook and then think to yourself that you have a relationship with that person. No. I know this from an experience. If somebody tells me something because the person's been just making observations about me, never extended a hand of fellowship, just making observations about me, being that unseen seer, and making judgments about me, and lets me know that, oh, by the way, you're this, aren't you? It feels so violated. It feels like my soul's been trampled upon. When somebody who's not my friend tells me that he or she has been making observations about me and has made a decision that this is who I am and that's how they want to see me, it feels like I've been violated. What do we need to do? We got to get rid of our fig leaves, folks. We got to get rid of our fig leaves. We numb ourselves. Okay? This generation, in the history of mankind, is the most material possessive, especially in America. We are the richest generation ever. Okay? We're the richest generation ever, but we're also the most addicted generation to gambling, to pornography, and a bunch of other things. And we are the most medicated generation ever. All designed to do what? Distract us from having to face the reality, the unseen seer. We numb ourselves. And then we also want to make everything that is uncertain in life, we want certainty. I've noticed that certainty has become a god in many of the people's lives that I interact with. And we see that in politics. We no longer have discourse. This is how I think should be done, handled, and this is how we ought to work at it, would be a discourse. But if you look at the politics, what do you hear? I'm right and you're wrong, and I'm in power, and therefore my way will be the way, otherwise it's highway, kind of a thing happens. Wanting certainty is not a bad thing. But making certainty an absolute thing is a rebellion against God. It's like wanting to be like God when we are not gods, when we are meant to only to reflect God's glory. We blame. Blame is a way to discharge pain and discomfort. So when an organization and even church, when the church and organization, even family goes through a transition, okay, something unhealthy happens during transition when it is not really intentionally watched out for. You know what happens? Blame game starts. Blame game starts. He's doing that, honey, because he's just like your father or your mother, kind of blame game. So, but if you listen to what the person is saying is that I'm mourning, I'm hurt, I'm sad by this decision that I don't agree with, this situation that I wish were different. I'm in pain. But we are scared of saying I'm in pain. We're scared to say my emotion is such that I'm mourning the loss. Instead, it's better for us, we feel like it's better for us to say it's so-and-so's fault. But dearly beloved, and I want to address especially the more mature folks in this church. I have no idea who they are, but if you feel like you're more mature, please do me a favor, do this. When you hear somebody blaming in your family, in your community, and even in our church, when you hear somebody like blaming stuff, just hear, this person is discharging pain and discomfort. And pray for that person. Pray for that person so that the person can find healing and comfort and Sabbath in God and God alone. We pretend, I'm going to skip, and we also try to be perfect. Perfection and perfectionism is a way to hide. I didn't realize this until a few years ago. All my life, people would say to me, Brian, you are a perfectionist. And I'm saying, no, I'm far from, no, I just go for the excellence. No, I'm not a perfectionist. I just want to give the very best to God. Maybe I'm burning the candles at both ends, but that's not because I'm pursuing perfection. I know I can't be perfect. Only God is. So I'm humble enough to know that I can't be perfect, and so therefore I'm only pursuing excellence. I came to realize that I was a struggling perfectionist and a struggling Pharisee. And I'm not sure when it started to happen, but I think it did happen at least in 1975. When I came to this country, I couldn't speak a word of English. Only 2 words that I knew were me too. So when things happen, I would say, yeah, me too. Yeah, I went to Francis Lewis F. Cole Junior High and Foley High School. When I first went to the middle school, there were kids who would say stuff to me. I had no idea what they were saying. And I would just smile and said, oh, this is good. They're coming to me. They're befriending me. But a few days, few weeks, few months later, as my ears opened up and I could hear what they were saying, they were making fun of me right in front of my face. And I think that's when, unbeknownst to me, I think I decided that I'm going to work hard. I'm going to study hard. I was already a good student, I suppose, and study English and speak English well and have a proper grammatical, and when speaking, have a proper intonation and so forth. I wanted to be better than those kids. I wanted to speak better. I wanted to be more smart and intelligent, and so I pursued excellence. But all along, I was hiding behind perfectionism because I felt ashamed. I didn't have to be, but I felt such. Some of you parents, you may not realize it. You're putting way too much weight on your kids because you want to be known as good parents. So you have this ideal child in mind. You feel like that your child needs to be at a certain school. You feel like that your child needs to get into a certain level of school. You feel like that you say to yourself, I'm doing this for Johnny. No. You're doing this for yourself because you want to be known as a good parent. And you're trying to hide behind perfectionism of being a good parent. You got to stop that. You got to get rid of the fig tree. What do you need to do? You need to put on Christ. Put on Christ. Our first instinct is to hide, to make excuses. But grace draws us. God's mercy is that God himself provides a covering. Genesis 3:21. Christ is the salvation for us because he clothes us with his righteousness. Put on Christ. Galatians 3:27 says, "For as many of you as were baptized into Christ have put on Christ." Salvation is putting on Christ. His righteousness, his perfection, his purity, his holiness. Put on Christ. Not just think about Christ, not just study about Christ, but put on Christ. Revelation 3:18 also tells us you need to put on Christ. Clothe yourself and clothe the shame of your nakedness. We can put on Christ. With our warts and all, we can stand before God on the judgment day because Christ on the cross became naked, exposed. He put on our sin. He put on our sin, and at the cross, he gives us the righteousness to put on. So dearly beloved, put on Christ. Let Christ be your clothing of righteousness. Let's pray.